Okay. Question. It's about the maintenance and support of dark fiber, or not of dark fiber perhaps, because that's normally what you buy or rent or get. But it's more the equipment you need, let's say repeaters and that kind of things. Do you do a study about availability of companies who do that for you, or do you assume that the end runner is going to do that themselves, which can be 24 hours a day, every day of the year?
Yeah, I didn't focus too much on this part of the work, but actually this is a very good question. Well, in fact, we would like to, in principle, explore all possible alternatives, but I think there are experiences of the NRNs where they operate their own equipment, and therefore I think that we want to provide as much as information as possible about this option. But also in the case of managed wavelength, I mean, if that's the only option, I think that we need to explore that, the technical aspects, but also the economical aspects involved for this option too.
We have time for one more question.
You said that one part of the study was to explore the legal aspects of legislation in those countries. Do you know, is there any example of the local government supporting the NREN to obtain the dark fiber through legislation? Like making it an obligation to telecom operators to provide dark fiber to NRENs under more favorable terms or something like that?
I don't know if that's done via the legislation, but
The situation is that our government put our telecom under huge pressure, and we are the only institution in the country which has such a contract for dark fiber lease. So there is nothing in the legislation. There is no some kind of a law or some kind of obligation for the Telecom Serbia, but they are doing it because at the moment it is owned, I think, 79% by our government. So they can be under pressure from the government because there is a huge influence from the government on the Telecom Serbia, but nothing in law or in regulation or something like that.
Thank you, Pavel. I hope this answers the question. I mean, in fact, my feeling also concerning other countries is that it's not really feasible to have laws that kind of provide for telecom operators to provide networks for fiber networks for social education. But in many cases, the government is the major owner of
Raz, dwa, trzy. Okay.
Yeah, well, there's a microphone right here underneath my mouth as well, so perhaps that works.
I will try to fix it and bring it back.
Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is to present to you some of the first results from the Compendium Survey 2005 and compare that with some of the data from earlier years. And I will attempt very tentatively to show you some trends. I'm not really supposed to do that, but I think it makes the talk more interesting, but it is really quite tentative. I'll tell you a little bit about the compendium itself, then I'll do some more warnings. Then there is one cross-cutting issue that I will come back to at several times during the presentation, and that's the issue of the digital divide and where it is. And in fact, some of what Valentino just has said is relevant to that, and some of what he's going to say, I think after me, is also relevant to that. Then I will show you some data on various aspects, budgets, schools, where we are with IPv6. And then I will get to a few developments that I think are somehow related to each other: traffic, bandwidth, grids, dark fiber, and finally some sort of a conclusion. So the compendium is an effort to collect basic data about all NRNs in Europe and surrounding countries. It started at the request of the TERENA membership, in fact, back in 2000. We tried it out at first. The first real edition came out in 2001. And we've been improving ever since. We've been learning ever since. Right now, it has become part of the GN2, the GN2 project. And all the data can be found on the TERENA website.
It's okay. Use that one.
To run ahead of them and do some of that myself. And hack the microphone again. I've made, of course, a selection out of the data. There's much more. And I've discovered when making the selection that even though all the data has already been double-checked and we've asked the NRNs to please look at it again, some problems did appear, so some more looking at inconsistencies, etc., may be needed. Okay, let's start with the budget. For EU and EFTA countries, so that's the EU plus Iceland, Switzerland, and Norway. I think you could say, when you look at the past 3 years, that NRNs are doing more. Well, I think we'll see later on that they are doing more, with more or less the same money. The largest NRN in terms of budget is DFN of Germany, followed by Ukerna, followed by Surfnet, Renater, and GAR of the Netherlands, France, and Italy. And here I should say something. You cannot really directly compare budgets from one NRN to another NRN. And that is because the way networking is organized is still very different from country to country. And you can't really say, Italy has 4 times the number of inhabitants as the Netherlands, therefore it deserves 4 times the budget. That's not really true. But because the networking inside the country doesn't change very much over time, you can look at an overall trend. And here you see the the figures for all the others. As you can see, on average, the NRNs in these countries have more than 300 million euros a year to spend. It is cyclical because in one year there's a big investment, perhaps in equipment or in transmission capacity, which then doesn't occur again in the year after, and then occurs again a few years after that. But as you can see, the picture seems relatively stable overall. In the other countries, the countries outside of the EU and EFTA region, the situation is different. From the countries that have answered the questionnaire, if you add up their budgets, they together have a little more to spend in a year than DFN itself has to spend for Germany. And there the situation is a little bit different. You can't really say they're doing the same with the same amount of money because there are individual things at play in the different countries. The largest budget, for example, is also more or less for the largest country, Turkey. And they have been able to get an increased budget over the past couple of years in ULAG-BIM and been able to do more with that. In the next one, Carnet of Croatia, that's traditionally an NRN that performs a lot of services that many other NRNs do not perform, and therefore has a relatively high budget. You see it has gone up and down a little bit. And I'd also like to highlight Serist of Algeria. They have this past year received a budget that allows them to upgrade the national network, maybe partly catalyzed by the upgrade that has been possible for their international connections because of the UMET Connect project. Okay, let's look at schools. This is a graph that shows the evolution in the total number of connected institutions in all the countries that were surveyed between 2003 and 2005. And as you can see, there are some clear market leaders there. The champion is GRNet. It connects almost 8,000 primary schools and 3,500 secondary schools. In second place is FCCN of Portugal, connecting 7,500 primary schools and 1,700 secondary schools. They have gone further in this direction than any other of the NRNs. But it's also perhaps interesting now to point out the third place, that's Russia. The Russian network connects 5,000 secondary schools. Let's look at some developments in other countries where there have been increases in the number of connected institutions. As you can see, the Romanians, Arnes of Slovenia, right? I know I always mix them up. Yeah, and Litnet have all made strides in this area. What I found interesting was that Renater of France is now also starting to connect secondary schools. In the past, the idea was that connecting primary and secondary schools was something that would be interesting and relevant to do for the smaller NRNs in the smaller countries, because it was felt that they could thereby improve their economies of scale, etc. But now you see that also a country of the size of France feels that it is efficient to do so. And we know that GAR of Italy is starting to connect secondary schools. They haven't done it yet, but they will do over the coming period. Now, yeah, but Carnet. Carnet is going to do it as well. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Now, this picture is in a way a little bit distorted because you should not think that in countries where the NRN doesn't connect these schools, those schools aren't connected. In many countries, for example, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Spain, they are being connected, and they are also being connected with government money. They're just not being connected by the NRN. I think that what might be relevant for countries considering this is to look at the UNIC model of Denmark. In Denmark, there's one umbrella organization, UNIC, and under that operate two sister organizations out of the same building, but with different budgets, etc. One to connect, Forskningsnettet, to connect the universities in the higher education sector, and another one, Skolenettet, to connect schools. Okay, next topic, IPv6. Is it happening, is the question. I think this is a fairly telling graph. It shows how many universities are connected in EU and EFTA countries and also in the other countries, and how many have some sort of IPv6 connection, either native IPv6 or tunneled or whatever. And as you can see, right now in the EU and EFTA area it's 15%, and in the other countries it's 3% of the universities. And this comes back, of course, when you look at traffic. We have asked NRNs to estimate what the percentage is of their current traffic that they think is IPv6. And there, Belgium thinks it's 8%, the Netherlands thinks it's 5%, all the others think it's 2% or less. Again, I should say, some NRNs have told us that they can't give us an estimate of this because they don't distinguish between IPv6 and IPv4 traffic on their network. So it could be that, for example, in Chestnut, everything is IPv6, even though I would imagine that you would see those packets turning up then somewhere in the neighboring countries where they would be counted and estimated. Now, we have also asked what they think the situation will be in 2007, so 2 years from now. So what the estimate is, of course, all very tentative of the traffic growth. And there you see an estimate of where NRNs think they will be in terms of IPv6 traffic in 2007. Romania thinks it will be almost at 15%. The other countries still think that the traffic will be below 10%. Maybe they're wrong, but that's what they've told us. Okay. Something more about traffic. I need to show you this, this graph first. We have worked in the review panel to define different types of traffic, and what I'm going to talk to you about is one type of the traffic, the so-called T3 traffic, or the traffic that goes from the NRN network to external networks. Some people have asked the question, is there now a slowing of the traffic growth? Over the years, NRNs have always seen very brisk traffic growth, and but is there now, let's say, some slowing of that growth? What you see here is a log scale of the total annual traffic in 2002, 2003, and 2004. And you see here that on the one hand we have Funet of Finland. Their traffic over the past 2 years increased by only 20%, which seems low when you compare it to other statistics on other years. On the other end of the scale we have HEAnet of Ireland. Their traffic between 2002 and 2004 was nearly 7 times, has grown by nearly 7 times. The median of these countries is a growth figure of 2.7 times as much traffic from 2002 to 2004. What you do see here is one other little interesting thing. In Finland, between 2003 and 2004, traffic actually went down. When we got these figures in and started looking at them, we thought maybe there's something wrong here. So we asked them, and they said, yes, in fact, our traffic has gone down because some of our universities have started to filter out material that they think might be illegal. And we've also adapted our charging policy so that now heavy users are punished a bit more. And therefore, they have been able actually to steer their traffic. There is a contrast here with the other countries outside of the EU and EFTA area. In Morocco, the traffic growth was 2.3 times. In Moldova, it was 30 times as much, and the median value here is 5.4 times. So I'm not sure, but it does seem to illustrate here that the traffic growth in the more advanced countries is slowing down a little bit if you compare it to the traffic growth in other countries. You could also approach it from the other way around. You could also say that for the first time it looks as if some of the poorer countries are actually closing the digital divide, are moving in the direction of that at least. Okay. Traffic, of course, has to go to universities. This graph shows you how many universities are connected at which bandwidth in January 2005. The one on the right-hand side is Renater of France. They call things or institutions universities. They count them as separate universities that are probably counted as parts of other institutions in other countries, and therefore they have a very high number. But out of that very high number, you see a large proportion, in fact it's also outside of the scale, is of institutions connected at 2 megabit per second or lower. It seems to me that in this day and age, 2 megabit per second for anything that's called a university, even if it's only a small one, is on the meager side. So I think that in some countries there is a digital divide in the country itself. And it may, of course, be the case also in other countries which have called larger agglomerations of institutions one university, where some of the institutions in that university might be getting far less than some of the other institutions in that same university. Of course, in France, there are also many institutions connected at higher levels. And in fact, there are also some at up to 1 gigabit. They don't go beyond 1 gigabit in France yet, but that's also off the scale. Okay, I'd like to point out some of the other elements of this graph, which you may find interesting. As you can see, many countries are now making the transition to gigabit connections for universities. And some countries, the Netherlands, but also, not only the Netherlands, also, for example, SANET and FUNET and CHESNET are well on their way to completing that transition to 1 gigabit connections. And in some countries, a start has been made with the transition to 10 gigabit connections, obviously using dark fiber. In the other countries outside of the EU and EFTA area, obviously the number of universities with low connections is still much higher than it is proportionately than it is in the EU and EFTA area. Even though there also you see that actually in some countries the transition to gigabit connections is being made. And here we look at some of the so-called traditionally considered smaller NRNs, Ambre of Serbia that Valentino has talked about, Renam of Moldova, and Marnet of Macedonia. And as you can see, they are now more or less jumping ahead and starting to make the transition to gigabit. Now, after the data has gone to the universities or outside of the universities, it has to go to the user, of course. And that's where it seems that there are now, let's say, the larger problems. International connections aren't really a problem. This is what the other countries outside of the EU and EFTA area thought in 2004 was their estimate of congestion in on-campus lands. And this is the same data for the EU and EFTA areas. And you can see that in some of the countries, the assessment is that there are relatively serious levels of congestion there. Of course, whether that is a function of how pessimistic the respondent is, or a function of true user complaints, is not completely clear. But that is the data that we have collected. By contrast, you see here the assessment of the congestion on external connections in the EU and EFTA area, and as it was last year for the other countries. I think it's a clear picture. Okay, something else, grids. We have asked NRNs whether or not they are aware of grid services currently running over their network. And the green areas are the countries where NRNs have said, yes, there are grid services running on our network. The orange area are the countries that have said, we are planning to introduce or to facilitate grid services on our NRN over the next 1 or 2 years. And the red are of course, the countries that have no plans for such services, or where they say there are no such services on their network. The grey countries are the ones that did not respond. Obviously, as you can see, grid services are becoming available in the great majority of countries. And who is providing those services? Out of 25 responses that we've received, 21 NRNs said that either the NRN itself is providing the services or that institutions are providing them, but with NRN support. We've also asked questions about dark fiber. And there you see, quite interestingly, that dark fiber is becoming more and more widely available to the NRN community across Europe. Right now, 10 out of 26 NRNs that have responded from the EU and EFTA area have, in some way or another, an all dark fiber backbone. And in 2007, they expect that this number will have increased to 14 NRNs. But in the other countries, you see a similar development, even though perhaps a bit slower. Already, 8 out of 20 countries say that they have a dark fiber backbone, and that number is set to increase. Okay. Somehow I think these things are related. We see that dark fiber is available and is being used. We see that grid services are here or are on their way. We see that even though there is bandwidth going to the universities, certain users are still experiencing congestion or are complaining. I'm not sure what it adds up to, but I think a clue may be found in a suggestion that SurfNet provided when they answered the survey. They said, why for 2006 don't you add questions on light path and light path usage to the survey? Again, more questions, of course. But I actually think that this shift towards what some call hybrid networking or towards customer-empowered fiber is something that that is about to happen. I think that's being suggested by the data. And whether or not the review panel will agree with me, we'll hear later on. Okay, so that more or less concludes my talk. We hope that you will learn more about it, be able to learn more about this, to read more about this, or about different trends that may be identified by different minds in the printed version of the compendium of 2005. We hope it will contain a number of paragraphs that will highlight some of these trends and developments. The printed version should be out in September. Comments and feedback and criticisms are always welcome. Thank you very much.
We've got time for one or two questions for Bert, if there are any questions from the floor.
Mike. Just two very brief comments. Number one, three. Number zero. Thanks, Bert, for getting all this together so rapidly, because I know the information, or at least the clarifications and the corrections, are still coming in. First point is, don't forget Marco on your slide. Very important member of the review panel, unique member of the review panel. And the other thing is, on IPv6 traffic, while you're quite right, it's very difficult for NRENs in many cases to distinguish that. The GEONT monthly reports do show IPv6 traffic now. They certainly bear out, or they corroborate the high figure given by the Belgian network. They seem to be top of the monthly charts in GEONT anyway. And there's a few other very high scorers there. So it's worth looking at the GEONT reports, because you do get actual figures for the total amount of traffic, which I think in GEONT now is about 3% IPv6, 2 or 3%, and also per NREN figures. Thanks.
Any more questions? In that case, thank you very much, Bert, and I'll ask our next speaker, who you may have seen before. It's Valentino Cavalli, my colleague. And this time he's going to talk about the GN2, the GEONT2 activity NA4. The GEONT2 projects give us an opportunity to support a number of activities, like the task forces, like the continuing publication of the compendium, and also a new activity for us, which is support for less developed countries. So.
Okay, looks like I can use this microphone. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Okay.
So this is, I think it's a bit less known part of the GEONT2 project. And I mean, I know we are a bit late, but I don't have many slides, and I can probably keep it short. I'll go straight to the overview. I will tell you just a little bit about background activities, then I will describe this activity in particular and how it works, and then I will also talk a little bit about one of the first results that we are obtaining from this part of the GEONT2 work. So the background is that in the past, TERENA had a so-called member development program, which was aimed at getting a better understanding about the status of research and education networking in countries inside the TERENA community, to identify possible inhibitors and potential new opportunities for developments and for getting up to the level of more advanced NRNs. At the same time, we carried out this exercise to promote the role of TERENA and to promote the participation of the academic community in those countries inside TERENA activities, task forces, and various projects. This took the form of some desk study plus an actual visit in the countries where a few people from the TERENA staff were going to visit the NRN, but also talk to the users and various stakeholders, politicians, and so on and so forth. And at the end provided a report with some recommendation, well, saying what was our view in order to try to promote research and development, research and networking in those countries. In the past couple of years, we had these visits, 3 visits to the countries mentioned here, Lithuania, Latvia, and the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, all of them TERENA members. Now, this has developed a little bit further in the GN2 project, which is the project that supports GEONT2 network. So GEONT2 is the network, GN2 is more than just a network, and besides various research activities that are subject of other talks during this conference, there is also this support activity for less advanced countries. This actually is the same activity where the compendium belongs to. So I would really suggest to consider this activity as complementary to the compendium, in the sense that it gives us a way of obtaining some more in-depth information about the country, but also to provide some additional support and to try to really help in the development. The target countries are not the whole GN2 community, but we are targeting some of the NRNs that participate in the GN2 project, plus at the moment those countries that had obtained connectivity to GÉANT via the CEREN and the EU MedConnect projects. The idea is that the participants in more, that more advanced participants in the GN2 project will assist the NRNs and possibly other actors at the local level in less advanced countries, and by addressing transfer of knowledge in some technical management policy areas. There is a very limited budget. It's only 600,000 euros over 4 years. We started in September 2004, we'll end in September 2008. This means 150,000 euros average per year, which certainly does not allow us to provide money for buying any equipment or any infrastructure, but really for organizing workshops, providing consultancy, and so on. This slide shows broadly what type of support actions we are planning to do. Technical workshops on specific operational aspects of technologies, which can be more or less advanced, really depending on the needs of the country itself. Management workshops, for users, targeting governments, funding bodies, etc. Really, again, depending on the needs. Some more targeted consultancy to research and education networking, including, for instance, support in the development of business plans, or how, for instance, to organize the NRN in some countries where the NRN doesn't exist, to provide, this kind of help. Another possibility is to getting staff members from organizations in less advanced countries to go on secondment for a period in a more advanced NRNs or university. We have the following method of work. We started last year with drafting submitting to the Commission a report that explains the procedure. The procedure includes a short list of the target countries. Many of these are in the Mediterranean area and in Southeast Europe, but there are also some countries in the Baltic area and a few other areas. Now, this short list is revised each year on the basis of these criteria that you see listed there. So we start from the bandwidth of the network, at the national level, and the external connectivity. We look at the human resources. We look at how if there is an organization providing research and education networking, we look at how it is organized and managed, the funding, and most of all, we look at the opportunities for being effective in providing the support. There are some cases where the situation is I would say it's so bad that the country goes immediately up on top of the priority, but then we have, for some reasons, less opportunity to be effective in our work. So we don't give highest priority just because of that. I would like to say that most of the information that we get for making this revision of the priority comes from the compendium. So And in some cases it's very limited information, because very often the compendium asks the NRN only the information that concerns the NRN itself, but whether we are really interested in understanding if there are any other, I mean, the whole academic situation and not only what is provided by the NRN. Anyway, this is the basis. In addition to this, we work on a so-called country needs assessment, which is really, as I mentioned before, doing an in-depth study on the various parameters for research and education. We identify an actor in the country that can provide us more information, and then we gather more intelligence by looking at existing reports from other projects and so on. And in all this process, the TERENA team is assisted by an advisory panel. I haven't mentioned the persons that are now at the moment member of this advisory panel. This is not a fixed set of persons. Is possible to change that. But the role of the panel is to provide advice, of course, but also to assess the work done by the TERENA team. There is one published output of this, is an annual report of the activities done. We have this is the initial focus countries in the past 12 months, where Albania, we visited Albania last month, and we are going to publish some confidential recommendations in the middle of this month, and the main outcome, which is in terms of really the actual support to the country, will be a workshop that we organize by mid-November 2005, gathering together all university rectors and deans of faculties, and really wanted to explain the situation in their countries so that they start doing something. Well, I will say something more in the next couple of slides about that. The other one is Morocco. We have been only studying, doing the desk study so far. The visit is later this month, and then we will have some follow-up during the summer and the fall 2005. Yeah, I'm really running out of time, but
5 minutes.
Okay. I really have to go quickly, I think, through this. Albania, there is no. There was an attempt a few years ago to establish an academic network of Albania by a decision of the Ministry of Education and Science and the Academy of Sciences. There are 2 boards that have been created, but there is no progress in that respect. So, in fact, at the moment, there is no NRN in Albania. And this is why we thought that one of the most effective action would be to let the users meet together in order to let them understand that they are those that can make pressure on the government and on the various stakeholders to create the NRN. There is one institution at the moment, INIMA, the Institute of Informatics and Applied Mathematics of the Academy of Science, which provides some network services at a broad level. They provide services for secondary level domain of the country code top level domain .al, plus SMTP and HTTP services for the Academy of Sciences. Only they have the institution line, and their kind of connectivity is 1 megabit leased line to the internet. They have had in the past 2 megabit international connectivity from CEREN, which has not, CEREN has ended, and the government decided not to support that internally anymore. What are the research and education institutions and networks in Albania? There are 11 universities. 6 of them are located in Tirana, which is the capital. The amount of half the country's student population, with 2 main universities, the University of Tirana and the Polytechnic universities. There are other universities in the major countries which are mentioned here, as you see. Plus, there is an Academy of Sciences with 14 institutes in Tirana. I think they're all in Tirana, and a really well, I say 40, but it's an undefined number of R&D department and ministry level. So, I mean, the situation of research, who does what, is a bit confusing, I would say. Anyway, there is no national academic network interconnecting universities or institutes. A few institutes in Tirana have computer labs, and these are those mentioned in the smaller bullet here: Faculty of Electrical Engineering, Natural Sciences, and Economy. And these have some computer labs which are only partially, we only have partial Ethernet-based LANs, and they are connected to the internet via ISPs, low-speed connection, very high costs, and you know, there are basically no dedicated resources for the provision of network services. There is a national strategy for information and communication technologies, which includes the creation of the NRN, as I mentioned before, but it's given very low priority in practice. There are elections, political elections on the 3rd of June that may change the situation. We didn't manage to meet the politicians, but we hope that something will change in the country. The telecommunication, on the telecommunication side, there is one incumbent operator, Alba Telecom, for fixed telephony, which is being privatized at the moment. So in fact, there is some opportunity there. I will say a bit more later on. The monopoly officially ended in 2004, whereas the market for mobile telephony is partially liberalized. The internet market is liberalized, but there is some confusion about data transmission. So there is an interesting opportunity now. Alba Telecom has some fiber. We learned that in the Seafire project. The fact that it's being privatized is probably the last opportunity now if we want to make some push on the government, which still owns the company, to give some of this infrastructure in use to the NRN by leasing it or whatever. And I have got a couple of slides about the Alba Telecom national network, but I want to focus on this one, the international one, which says that, I mean, says something more about the cross-border fibers that they have with other countries in the north, and also with Italy and Croatia via sea cable. Conclusions, really don't have more time for this, but the important thing is to make sure that the new government gives higher priority to information society development and to research and education networking. So we will also invite some government representatives to this workshop in November. Lobbying in favor of creating the NRN or agreeing on one institution representing the whole research and education community, which is important if in the future we want to, we hope that, for instance, Albania could become a member of the GN2 project in the future, like it happens with other countries in the region, and to favor the exploitation of existing international initiatives, like a follow-up of CEREN, CEREN2, and other projects from other national governments in the region, and try to promote the creation of a national network backbone in the country. Yeah, finished.
I'm very pleased to learn you can talk so fast. Okay, are there any questions from the floor for Valentino? I think we have time for one, maybe. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the last speaker, who's just arrived, and informs me that he's going to do a death-defying act with no slides whatsoever. I mean, this is not a presentation of something that's being done in TERENA right now. It's about a new initiative. Steve Williams is from UKERNA. He represents or looks after the area of voice and video collaboration on the TERENA Technical Committee, and he's going to speak about a new initiative, and I hope encourage you all to get involved in that initiative. So, Steve Williams.
Thank you, John. This is just going to be a quick overview of a study that we're hoping to put in place. As John says, I work... No, there are no slides. It's nice and simple. TERENA, I'm a member of TERENA technical community, specifically with responsibility for voice and video, those sorts of things. We were asked by a number of people just to take a look at the collaboration area, voice and video conferencing specifically, in terms of we have many projects across Europe now that are looking to use voice and video conferencing for collaboration, the GN2 JRAs, EGE, and various others. So, and the issue being that there are lots of national services available, but if you use a national service, generally you have to have at least one of the participants in that country. So if you have a large European group, sometimes, you know, France, Germany, Italy might want to meet, and then they can't use services available in the UK or something like that. So what they've said is, like, go ahead, let's have a look. Let's see what services are available, update the data on services that are currently available from NRENs across Europe, and try and find a way how we can, as TERENA, can help people, to find the existing services that are there, but is there any way that we can enable new European projects coming along, or just projects that need trans-European collaboration in some way? You know, there are lots of people in biological sciences, in computer science, that know nothing about networks, know nothing about the communities that exist within, like, TFEVC, who need this collaboration, and quite often they're going out and buying equipment separately, even when there are infrastructures available within the NREN, let alone across Europe. So the idea of the study is to figure out what's there and find out how we can promote it to the community as a whole, meaning really at the end users, to say this kit is available now. The outcome of the study, we hope, will be recommendations as to should we try and put in place some sort of European Videocon voice and video service? Is there a demand for a European service based on what the NRENs are currently doing? Now, whether that would involve somebody buying equipment to support a European service, or whether it would be people saying that we need this European service, let's put some money into existing services that exist in NRENs in order specifically for them to promote and support European collaboration. There are many ways of doing this. What we don't know at the moment is the best way of going about it. So a study will be put in place. There's a little bit of funding available, and it should be concluded by September or so. And I'll say that the outcome of that will then lead on to further discussion as to how we do things. But if there is anyone here who's either involved in European projects as the end user point of view, or if you have any thoughts on how we can promote these trans-European collaborations, and also specifically about what you feel the demand is on the collaboration side. And we obviously have a demand for voice and video conferencing services, for multi-point services. The other side of it is the desktop, the screen sharing ability. Now, some services offer application sharing, others offer desktop sharing. So whatever, even if you run a DOS application or a Linux application, or whatever you're running, you can then share your screen with other people involved in the conference. Obviously, then there's the whole range of web collaboration tools which may or may not involve voice and video, but certainly will involve sharing of some way, shape, and form. So all these will be put into a pot, mixed up, and we'll have to have a look at the end and see if there's any specific easy way of promoting at least something that, if somebody's starting a project and say, what's the best way of the 6 people across Europe linking together, we can say, this service is available, you can use it, it's free of charge because it's funded by the academic community, and you'll be able to do it. So at least we'll have an answer to some of those questions. But as I say, if you have any feelings about how we can go about this, or if you want to feed anything into it, please come and see me, or just get in touch with TERENA, and all that will be passed on to us. Yes.
Could I get a show of hands of people who think they might be able to participate or contribute to this initiative? 1, 2.
I thought there was going to be no hands there. It's all right, they're just waving.
If I squinch my eyes up, it makes it about 6.
Yeah, I suppose it's probably worth mentioning this, but I mean, we've had a lot of services donated, if you like, from HungerNet, CarNet, GRNet, SurfNet for various European meetings, and you know they've put a lot of effort into these meetings in donating the services and having technical support available for when things go wrong, which invariably they do. And it does take a bit of effort, and you know, hats off to them. They've actually put up and said, you know, you can have these services that are available. So what we want to do is just take that idea and formalise it, and if somebody is putting the effort in, maybe try and make it so that at least they're getting some funding for doing that from somewhere.
So the messages are two. One is get involved, and secondly is to look on the TFVVC webpage.
Yeah, there'll be more information on TFVVC site once things are underway.
Okay, thank you. Cool. In that case, I'd like to thank you. Okay, only get a shortcut. In that case, can we thank all of the speakers again, and thank me for finishing 5 minutes before somehow. You won't miss your bus.